And we are off. Your top 20 women coming out of quarterfinals, taking the stage here in Berlin, Germany. And Lucy, you've competed in multiple different venues, obviously CrossFit Games being the biggest stage, Wadapalooza.
Yeah, for sure.
This venue that we have here is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it is so cool. And it's going to be, if it is full, Saturday, Sunday, this is going to be insane because it's like all four sides covered and it goes up quite high.
So vertical.
And it's going to be really loud.
We will be sold out this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We heard from the event director says that this will be a jam-packed house.
That's really good news. And it shows the demand, like the popularity of CrossFit in Europe. Like people want these kind of competitions here.
Daniel Chaffee was talking to us earlier during this morning about, Europe doesn't have a lot of major big events, right? The Italian Throwdown, maybe the Madrid CrossFit Championship is another one, but having this semifinal here, which effectively is the European Championships for these athletes and teams is really what makes this special. Yeah,
exactly. And it's good to see like events like Madrid having more money going into it, bigger prize money, that kind of thing, like attracting people outside of Europe as well to come to that kind of event. And also giving something for the European fans that doesn't mean that they have to travel all the way to the States to be able to go and see it.
You hear the cheers as the athletes' names are getting called out, and as you look at the top 20 coming into this, it is just a stacked field. And we know we have 11 qualifying spots for the individual women, but I mean, you saw athletes like Jennifer Muir in Heat 2 and Emma McQuaid, and a lot of it is like, just because there's 11 spots versus maybe the 5 in each semifinal we had last year does not mean it's an easier road to the CrossFit Games.
No, for sure. It's like the European field is so stacked. There are like 20 plus athletes that either have been to the games before or very much could go to the games. And so it's going to be a really, really tight competition this weekend. And I think the top 20 as well, like they're so consistent in everything that you're going to see that like all of the top 20, they stay in the top 20 for a lot of the events, I think, rather than in some of the other semifinals, we've seen people like in the bottom 30 of the competition still qualifying for the games. I don't think we'll see that as much in Europe just because of the experience of a lot of these athletes.
Another thing to think about is the number of athletes competing at one time. In the previous, it was 30. Like we've seen in other semifinals, it's 30 individual men, 30 individual women. It's 60. Yeah. So the volatility of the leaderboard, depending on the type of test that we have, also plays in the factor there.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it more exciting as well, I mean, it makes it kind of more nerve-wracking as an athlete, but for a spectator, it makes it more exciting because there is so much movement in the leaderboard. Whereas you wouldn't really see that if it's a smaller field. Like people might drop 1 or 2 places, but here people will drop, especially in the first couple of days. It will be quite, quite volatile, as you say.
You guys just joining us. This is individual test 1, heat number 3. I'm chasing with Lucy Campbell. Taking on test 1, 3,000 meters on the Echo Bike. That is where we are currently at. 84-foot hand-over-hand sled pull at 180 pounds, 81.5 kilograms. 2K run on the AirRunner, 84-foot hand-over-hand pull, 1,000-meter ski, and then a 92-foot hand-over-hand pull to the finish line. And, Lucy, you talked about, the wrist injury and getting through this. Is this test actually something you could do with the injury?
It's something I could try, but since I had a surgery that then found out about, that was how we found out about the fracture. And since recovering from that, my grip hasn't been great. But it's one of the ones that I would definitely be able to give a go fairly soon, I think. It's just hard to get your hands on a sled like this. And also, as we're seeing,
the surface
matters so much. Like, I think it's really interesting to see kind of how it changes the event completely. If this is a strength event and it's solely on the pull, versus if the pull isn't that bad, then all of a sudden this is solely on endurance and engine.
You see the top 2 times in the world come out of this, and it was in heat number 1. And off the bike first over in lane number 1 is Jacqueline Dahlstrom. Actually, that is lane 2. Amy Kringle, Nicole Pure after her. As athletes moving from the 3K bike to our first sled pull. And Lucy, as you said, though the test stimulus may change here in this semifinal, it doesn't change how athletes are getting there, right? If you have a faster sled in Europe and a tougher one in maybe North America, it's an isolated competition in itself, but with a lighter or an easier sliding sled, how does this change the way you would approach this test as an athlete?
I think it just means that you can afford to push the ergs a little bit more, just because then you're not having to like save yourself for some big efforts on the sled, and it just makes the whole thing a lot more consistent in terms of that like heart rate demand. Yeah, this is interesting. Someone's having a nightmare there with their sled.
Yeah, well, and as you said, it's like, okay, that has to put more into the ergs in the machines.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's a better, or it's a easier test for some, because some athletes may be banking on the sled pull being the tougher portion of this test.
It just changes it slightly, that's the thing. Like, it's very similar, it just puts the emphasis on something else other than just the sled pull.
Time to beat coming in, set in heat number 2. It's the fastest time we've seen in the world so far, set by Jennifer Muir, unofficially at 23:47. The previous time to beat was 24:30. As your top athletes coming out of quarterfinals, taking on test number 1 for the individual women. As after this sled pull, athletes will make their way to the 2K run, and first on the runner is actually Karin Frey in lane 16. Next is Laura Horvath, Sarah Sigmundsdottir. So your top 3 athletes, Karin Frey over in lane 16, over there in lane number 10, center part of your screen, Laura Horvath, and then in lane 18. Sorry, lane 6, Sarah Sigmundsdottir. 2,000 meters on the air runner. As we still have a couple athletes working their sled pulls. You're just joining us, welcome to the 2023 European Semifinal. Chasing with Lucy Campbell. Heat 3, individual test number 1.
It's interesting because I think although this sled maybe is moving a little bit easier than it has done it, like for instance some of the American semis, people are making moves on the sled. So it doesn't just mean that it's all on the ergs now. It's still, if you can move that sled even faster, it's all on that.
It almost takes a little bit of the pacing out, right? You still got to pace within the distance that you're running, right? You don't run a 2K at a 400-meter pace. But that constant race from end to end versus the ebbs and flows of the ergs and the machines and the heavy sled pull, it does change the dynamic of the test. If you guys are looking at us, welcome to the CrossFit Games podcast coverage here of the 2023 European Semifinal. Lanes 1 through 20, left to right on your screen. In lane number 1, Jacqueline Dahlstrom. Lane 2, Amy Kringle. Lane 3, Nicole Here. Lane 4, Ella Wunger. Lane 5, Alyssa Fuliano. Lane 6, Sarah Sigmundsdottir. Lane 7, Ohaina Moya. Lane 8, Turi Helgadottir. Lane 9, Emma Tall. Lane 10, Laura Horvath. Lane 11, Gabriela Migala. Lane 12, Manon Agonese. Lane 13, welcome back, Annie Thorisdottir. Lane 14, Andrea Solberg. Lane 15, Claudia Gluck. Lane 16, Karin Frey. Lane 17, Matilda Garns. Lane 18, Solveig Sigurdottir. Lane 19, Elena Karatala. Lane 20, Linda Kiesman. And Lucy, just reading those names out, I'm like, who's going? Who are the 11 that are going? And that's going to be the exciting part all weekend long. 7 tests for these individuals this weekend. Starting off with test 1, heat 3. All 20 athletes chasing the time to beat set by Jennifer Muir in heat number 2 at 23:47. Lucy, when you're looking at this test itself, obviously different athletes, different approaches. Your background a bit more on the endurance side coming into your CrossFit career. How do you approach this middle 2K? Because it's going to be the longest these athletes are going to spend on a single implement.
Yeah, I mean, I think you either go one or two ways. You either push the 2K if you're a good runner to be able to buy yourself the time if the sled isn't necessarily your strong suit, but you also risk potentially pushing a little bit too hard and then the sled suffering a little bit more. So I think I would probably go the opposite approach, would be to pace this a little bit more than I would want to, so that I can then push on the sled a little bit more, knowing that that would probably be where, for me personally, I would struggle more on this event.
And then you look at this, is that coming off this 2K, you've basically got 2 sled pulls and then the ski in the middle, which the ski isn't helping anything when it comes to your sled pull.
No, exactly. That latter half of this event, like, it's all pulling. You go from the horizontal to the vertical pull to the horizontal pull again, and that's the thing. Plus, then it's like no let up for your grip strength as well, because you're still holding the erg handles and that kind of thing. So I think that'll definitely be interesting. If people have gone a little bit too hard at the start, that's where they'll suffer.
Athletes in the middle portion of this test, this 2K run. They've already had a 3K echo bike and 1 sled pull, 84 feet done in 3 sections. Car free over in lane 16. Lanes going left to right on your screen. Lane 16 was the first to the runner, followed by Sarah Sigmundsdottir and Laura Horvath. But you see some names we haven't seen in competition, either going team or some injuries, and Sarah Sigmundsdottir being one of those, but Annie Thorisdottir back in individual competition this year.
And I think that's what makes this whole event so much harder in terms of the qualification spots, because it's like you've got probably 11 athletes here that have games experience, let alone the people that are on the edge and very much have the right to be there this year. So I think it's going to be such a hard event. When
we talk about earning your spot, you're definitely going to have to earn that spot coming out of the European semifinal.
Yeah.
11 spots for the women, 11 spots for the men, 10 total spots for the team. So we're in individual test number 1, heat number 3. Waiting for a hand in the air. The time to beat set in heat number 2 by Jennifer Muir, 23:47. So you guys are joining us on the Renegade podcast here for the CrossFit Games. Your full coverage will be coming up later this afternoon. Thank you guys for joining us here. I'm Chase Singer with Lucy Campbell. So the athletes are in the middle portion of this test for the 2,000 meter run. And depending on your ability, we talked about the type of athlete that could be successful here, especially in the tougher sleds. And bigger, stronger with big engines tends to be a nice combo for this particular test. But if the sled's moving fast, yes, that might bode well for the smaller athlete that would typically struggle on the sled. But how much more advantageous is that for the athlete that is actually good at it?
Yeah, and I think as well, like, even if the sled is moving better, it's still probably going to be the slightly bigger athletes that are going to benefit more. And I think the thing about this run as well is that, like, if this were a run not on the Assault runners, that also would change things, because these Assault runners, like, there's a special technique to running well on an Assault runner, and it's not the same as how you would run on the road to run quick.
What is it about the Assault runner that you do need to not necessarily change, but take advantage of to be successful?
So I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, because of the slope, the higher up you plant your foot, so the further forward you plant your foot, the more of a pull you get back from it. But that also, like, burns your hamstrings way more. It's also the complete opposite of what you would expect from a road run, because actually you would want to plant your foot underneath your body. So it's a really strange thing. It's definitely a different type of running to if you were doing it on the road.
Do you feel that tax in maybe a different position? Because if you're striking
sure.
underneath your body, you're probably thinking quads, even though it's a pull from the hamstring. But does that get manifested more hamstring and calf-wise on the air runner?
100%. It's so much more in the hamstrings.
Center lanes, 7 through 12. on your screen. Hand in the air. That's lane 12, Manon Anganese. First hand in the air, followed by lane 4, Ella Wunger. And Annie Thorisdottir. Hands in the air, shooting up all over the place.
Gabi is off and onto that first sled pull. That was quick.
Gabi Migala is, you're right, is off and onto the first sled pull. Migala in the center part of your screen in the purple. So Migala is off first in a big way. It's like hands went in the air and she decided, it's like, no, I'm already done. Sorry, too late.
She was good as well last year at Lowlands on the Assault Run deadlift handstand walk event as well. She was really fast on that Assault Runner, so she clearly does a lot of work with it.
Gabi Migala was one length done, and finally she is joined by Manon Anganese.
Amy Kringle's off as well in lane 2. That was also going to be, she had a really good event one at SID last year that was pretty much all engine work. So I think anything with the engine, with the ergs, she's going to be pretty good on.
Current leader in this heat, Gabi Migala in lane 11, center part of your screen. We are approaching the 16:30 mark. Time to beat coming in, set by Jennifer Muir, 23:47. And we said earlier, the sleds here in Berlin are fast, which just means the athletes got to go that much faster. Not necessarily a bonus.
Not voluntarily, I don't think.
Now, Lucy, you're in the background, say you're in heat 3. Are you paying attention maybe what the times are or how things are moving out here because the sleds being such a huge part of this particular test?
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily pay attention. I mean, yeah, you probably do pay attention to the times just so that you've got a rough time frame of like what's a quote-unquote good finish, but I think it's more like key pieces of information, like you want to know that the sled is moving better than what you think it might do, and because that's the information that's potentially going to, you know, change your game plan going into it as to how you tackle the ergs and that kind of thing.
Gabi Migala, your early leader in lane 11. She's all purple, center lane. And she is done with her sled as she moves to the SkiErg. Manon Anganese was in second place coming in. She is on her final length along with Laura Horvath, Karin Freyova, and Annie Thorisdottir. And Gabi Migala absolutely crushed that 2K run.
Yeah. She'd pretty much already done a full sled pull before Manon Anganese got off the runner.
Karin Freyova second to the SkiErg behind lane 2, Amy Kringle. So it looks like Gabi Migala, Amy Kringle, and Karin Freyova are your top 3 in this heat. Chasing the time to beat, 23:47 set by Jennifer Muir. Fastest time we've seen in the world. And Lucy, for those that aren't terribly familiar with the SkiErg, what is it about putting it here at the end, sandwiched between 2 sled pulls, that is a game changer for these athletes?
It's just a lot on the lats, especially because it's like, so when the way that people are having to do this sled pull, it's basically like a hip hinge and then a pull. And I think that last bit, that pull every time, you see that when you watch the athletes, like they're really fully stretched out. That's a lot in terms of the lat positioning. You're really stretching the lats, and then you're going into the ski, which again, like that reach up, you're driving down, you're using your lats to do that. The thing is, I think it'll be interesting because if you watch a lot of the athletes, they're hinging a lot, which means that they're probably trying to use their body weight a lot more on this to be able to move that ski rather than like fully engaging the lats at the top of the movement and then driving down like that.
Is there a way to manipulate the ski to save yourself for that last pull?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, it's trying to get your chest down low to use as much of your body weight going down as possible.
1,000-meter ski before we get into that last sled pull. Gabi Migala was all alone for what felt like an eternity, as she is your early leader. She's in the center part of your lane in the all purple. Thorisdottir is still working on her last sled pull, along with Elena Karatala.
And Claudia Gluck in the middle as well. They're all quite small athletes.
This 1,000-meter skier. Judges will put their hand in the air once they hit 100 meters left to go.
Migala's in her last 100. Judges' hands up.
And just like that, Gabi Migala. We are approaching 21.5 minutes. Jeremy Austin and I were having a bet as if, will we see a 22 here? The time to beat is 23:47. And Migala in lane 11 on her last pull, and she'll have 1 minute and 20 seconds to do it. The time to beat, 23:47. That's 2 minutes from now, and if Migala pulls anything like she did, that time is in jeopardy. Here comes Gabi Migala, approaching the 22-minute mark. Three sled pulls, 92 total feet, 180 pounds. That sled's looking a little bit tougher on this this last pull coming off the SkiErg.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting though, because I always, like, if you watch her pulls, it's so consistent every time. It's like hinge, pull, regrip, hinge, pull, regrip.
Is there a tempo or rhythm you can gain on something like this?
I mean, I always think, like, I always say to the athletes that I coach at the box I work at, that you just want to find the rhythm in whatever you're doing, and then you just stick to a rhythm. And for some people it's slower, and for some people it's a bit faster, but you want to find the rhythm because then that keeps you, like, mentally in it as well.
Amy Kringle on the right side of your screen is in second. Karin Freyova in third. Karin Freyova is cranking on her sled pulls. Gabi Migala is just getting started with her second one. So Gabi Migala, who came in with a huge lead coming into the 1,000-meter ski, she may get tracked down here by Freyova or Kringle. Gabi Migala halfway done with her second length. Freyova and Kringle just starting their second length. And one thing that may be a little bit different, when you look at this carpet sled, is that your plates can slide off a little bit on the side.
Yeah.
If you got a quicker sled pull, that carpet is actually going to be better than the weights touching the ground.
Yeah.
And that may be one thing for Gabi Migala, is some of her plates are touching the ground where Freyova is not. Freyova trying to run down Gabriela Migala. Now we're approaching the 24-minute mark, so it looks like the time from test heat 2 is going to stand for Jennifer Muir.
That is very impressive.
Muir's time will stand. Gabi Migala is trying to hold off Karin Freyova and Amy Kringle. Gabi Migala in lane 11. Just a couple more pulls to go. And Migala will get through at 24:33, and that might be behind the time set in our heat 1 time. So our fastest times not coming from the third and final heat, coming from heats 1 and 2. Karin Freyova is done. Amy Kringle has a couple pulls left over in lane number 2. So Freyova will take second in this heat. Amy Kringle is in. We have 5 minutes left.
Looks like Annie's coming in now.
Annie Thorisdottir is done. Sarah Sigmundsdottir may be next to finish over in lane number 6. Sigmundsdottir hasn't got her, yeah. Sigmundsdottir stopped at the line.
No, still not done.
Still not getting her sled across. Sigmundsdottir over there in lane number 6 had stopped after her sled got to the AirRunner. So at 25:55, that should be when her time actually is. And in a field like this, Lucy, we talked about is like short little mistakes. There's not a lot of room for that.
Yeah, no, especially in this kind of event, it seems like there's going to be a lot of people within the same minute, let's say, and every second counts in that circumstance.
And an athlete that we thought would do well in this first test, Laura Horvath in lane 10 is still working on her third and final pull. The chip timer is on the edge of the sled, so it's not going to stop unless you get it across that red finish mat. You were talking earlier that Sarah Sigmundsdottir actually stopped pulling when it got to the yellow tape line, but as we said earlier, the third and final pull is 92 total feet. It's an extra 8 feet than the 84 previously, which is at the yellow tape lines. The last part of the pull goes all the way to the red.
And those are the kind of like small mistakes that you make when your heart rate's high, you're at the end of the event, and you're thinking about just trying to finish, and it's those little things that sometimes just kind of slip your mind that obviously, you know, they'll talk about in the briefing, but when you're in the heat of the moment and you're just trying to finish the event, those are the little things that sometimes can, you know, you just forget about.
And how many times have we seen at the end of the weekend in some of those last qualifying spots, tiebreakers, 2 points, 3 points,
yeah.
1 point. And that's just not somewhere you want to put yourself in the position at the end of the weekend. Who knows how it shakes out, but those, you don't want those to be one of those look backs to like, if only.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Three athletes left on the floor. Turi Helgadottir, Claudia Gluck, and Elena Karatala. And it really seems like the big thing here for these athletes is actually the toughness of the sled pull for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, like, when it's distance on a SkiErg and not calories, like, everyone's going to be going pretty much within 10 seconds per 500 of each other. And it shows that that's not really where the moves are made. Like, it's all on the ski when it comes to that kind of thing. All on the sled, sorry.
1 minute remaining. Turi Helgadottir just trying to get underneath the time cap, along with Claudia Gluck and Elena Karatala. Karatala is actually done, so it's just Gluck and Helgadottir. And Helgadottir, who had a fantastic performance last year at strength and depth.
Come on, Claudia.
Having a tough start to the weekend. Now, a bad finish is not a death sentence. We've seen crazier things happening. Obviously, one of the bigger ones is Sydney Wells actually getting a 58th place finish and still qualifying for the CrossFit Games. But how tough is it to bounce back from to start the weekend off like that?
Yeah, it just puts a lot more pressure on the rest of the events, and that's not really what you want going into it.
Crowd gets to their feet, cheering on your top athletes here in Heat 3, individual test number 1 for the women. And Gabi Migala takes the heat, but not the test record.